Hey guys, it's Elise and welcome back to My Cupcake Addiction. Today we're going to be making a dinosaur themed cake, kind of in honor of Jurassic Park, but mainly because my 4-year-old son Oliver has been heavily requesting that I make this particular cake. So the things that you'll need today, I've got some white chocolate that's here melting over a double boiler. I've got some chocolate ganache, one of my favorite mud cake recipes, in a 6-inch, and I've also got a ton of crushed Oreo cookies. I've got a serrated edge knife and an offset spatula, a little bit of wax paper and a template of a dinosaur foot. And I've also got a couple of, these are ice molds with a dinosaur bone theme. These ones are from a brand called Fred, but you can pick up dinosaur bone molds from a ton of different places. I'm going to leave everything you need to recreate this recipe. So the recipes, the measurements, the conversions, and the template for your little dinosaur claw on the MyCupcakeAddiction.com website. Let's get started. So I've just popped my white chocolate into a disposable piping bag. You could also use a Ziploc bag here. So I'm just going to cut a relatively fine little tip off the end, and I'm going to trace around my dinosaur claw. You could seriously print out pretty much any image you like. You could do a dinosaur skull if you're feeling adventurous. Just something to go on top of our cake because most of the details are going to be hidden inside. Once you've got your little dinosaur claw all done, ready to go, you can use that same piping bag, and you might want to cut off just a little bit more so it's a little bit thicker to pipe into your little chocolate molds. And with your dinosaur bones, I suggest making like 3 or 4 molds of each of those because you want to have tons of dinosaur bones hidden inside this cake for your guests to find. So once they're completely full, give them a couple of good smacks down on the bench because these particular molds are really detailed, and the more that you can kind of tap that chocolate into every one of those little grooves, the better your little dinosaur is going to look when it comes out. Those ones are going to go off into the fridge or the freezer to set. While those ones are setting, we're going to divide our cake. Now, some people like to use a cake leveler here, but I just do it old school by eye. So I'm going to take a serrated edge bread knife, and as I cut, I'm actually going to twist the cake so that I can kind of like meet the first line up with the rest. I'm going to cut mine into 3 even portions, leaving enough room that I can cut the top off and actually make it quite neat and flat on top. I'm going to use just a little cake plate, and I'm going to use a little bit of that ganache. So my ganache is in a couple of different stages. Some of mine is fully set and some of mine is semi-set. I'm going to use that ganache straight on the cake plate, and I'm going to use that to place down my first layer of cake. A very thin layer of ganache goes straight on top, and this is just to make it like a little bit sticky, but not too much because there's going to be a fair bit of frosting going on with this cake. And then I've got some of my set ganache in a piping bag. So for this, you want quite a thick tip cut out of the end. And we're going to pipe almost like a sausage of ganache all the way around that outside layer. Like so. You do need to make sure this ganache is really quite firm because it's going to kind of act as like a bit of a wall to keep all of our cookie crumbs and our bones in place. So when you take those little dinosaur bones out of the freezer, you should just be able to really easily peel them out of their little tiny containers. You can see how beautiful and detailed those are. With a great assortment of dinosaur bones to choose from, I'm going to start sticking them straight into the cake. I'm actually going to break some of my bones in half because I don't want any really massive bones. With your first little layer of bones all nice and set, you're going to take some of your Oreo cookie dirt and we're going to completely cover those up. You want to try and keep all this roughly level with that little sausage of ganache because that's going to give your top layer something to stick to. Perfect. On goes another layer of the wet ganache. And another nice big coil of that chocolate ganache that's been set. And onto the bones. With your white chocolate, even though when they first come out of the molds, they're going to be really firm, once they're actually back down to room temperature, they are really quite easy just to break apart, so they're not going to be too bad to cut through. Another handful of cookie crumbs. And then on goes our final layer of cake. Now we're going to use that semi-set ganache, and we're going to just cover the cake completely, all the way around the sides and the edges. All right, perfect. So then you want to take some of your cookie crumbs and we're just going to press them all up against the side of the cake. And this is where it gets messy. You want to make sure here that your cookie crumbs are quite finely smashed and crushed because you want this to look like dirt, so you don't want any big chunks of cookie in there. Just patting them up on the side, all around the outside of that cake. With any cake covered in cookie crumbs, there's going to be a bit of a tidy up before we do the final steps. So now that we don't have cookie crumbs absolutely everywhere, I'm actually going to mess things up again with some more cookie crumbs, and I'm going to sprinkle them over my remaining bones. Now this is to give the bones the impression that they've been buried in dirt. All right, I'm going to take some of those little skulls and fun shapes, and I'm just going to sort of scatter them around so that our dinosaur bone stash is very plentiful. And then finally, don't forget about our little dinosaur claw print. We're going to place that straight down on top of the cake. And we're done. That is a pretty simple cake to put together. It looks relatively simple from the outside, but once your guests cut into it, I recommend serving it with some little paintbrushes and maybe some little paleontology tools so they can find their own dinosaur bones and put together those gorgeous little skeletons at the time of the birthday cake. I love this idea. Ollie's gonna love this idea. I hope you guys loved it too. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do for 2 new videos every week. And as always, guys, thanks very much for watching.